one of the first questions you're going to have to ask yourself is, where do you do your filming? In what room of your house? I'm filming in a room that's 20 foot by 10 foot. It's primarily my office, so I need to work in there, and I'm only filming in sort of a small portion of it. I think you could probably get by with a 10 foot by 10 foot dedicated filming space, but you will have to be clever about your use of this micro studio space. Before we get into how I've set up this room and how you're going to have to set up to work in such a small space, let's talk about the important qualities of the room. You're going to be, well, the first thing you should be thinking about is lighting. You're going to have to be putting in some serious lights in the room. That's going to generate heat, so you have to worry about overheating in that room. And you're going to have to worry about outside light, outside noise. I've got the windows closed off in this room completely because, as wonderful as natural light is, it's not consistent. You film at different times of the day. You get very different looks. Since I want consistency, the outside lights are off, but it does generate quite a bit of heat in this room, and keeping this room cool is an issue. It's also important that not much sound comes in from outside. So if you're working right off a street, that could be a problem. But you're also going to be generating noise to others in the house. If you've got a spouse that you're going to be keeping up at night, that's something to be concerned about. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this table here. This is a table that I custom built. It's about 4.5, 5 feet long by 4 feet wide. The actual play space is 3 foot by 4 foot, sized to fit a mat perfectly with its edges under these rabbited areas. It's got a 4-inch wide railing and a short 1.5-inch vault. Just makes it more comfortable to work in. The primary requirement for this table was that it be really solid, no movement at all. And that happens partly because it's built on with a 3/4-inch hardwood veneer plywood, which is very heavy. But also it's sitting on 3 bookshelf pedestals, which are very heavy duty. It's screwed to them. Those also provide storage, and then those are sort of marked on the floor so the table won't shift around or move at all. Now, a major way to set up your studio so that it occupies minimal space is to get everything off the floor. So when I initially set up this room for filming, I had the front camera on a tripod, on the standard tripod on the ground. I had lights on lighting stands, and this quickly becomes like an obstacle course. It's horrible use of space. These tripods take up a lot of floor space, and they're constantly threatening to be bumped into and knocked around, and horrible. So the main insight here is to get everything off the floor. Well, there's 2 ways that I do that. The first way is I've got a beam across the width of this room, close to the ceiling, and everything that I can hang off that beam, I do. So it's a beam built up of 2 1x4 boards. It's very stable. It's easy to take down. And off that beam hang down some U-shaped boards that equipment can attach to. So the top-down camera is right about here, mounted down, attached with an arm. It's a Manfrotto 244 arm. It's very strong, very expensive. It's about $110 or so, but it can hold a 5-pound camera very easily. It's easy to adjust, super stable. Also coming down off that beam is the main shotgun microphone, which is right out of frame here, and my main heavy-duty light, which is over here, is also attached to that beam. All of the wiring for power for those devices run across the beam and then come down the wall. So the wall is where the end of this is. And the second way to really save space and get things off the floor is that my front camera is sitting on a cabinet against the wall. It's sitting on top of there's a mini tripod sitting on the top of that cabinet. The camera is mounted on that. I can adjust that. I can tilt it down, up, any way I want. And that camera is actually sitting right in front of a monitor, which is against the wall. So when I'm looking at the camera, behind the camera is a monitor, a nice big 27-inch 4K monitor, so I can see very clearly when the image is in focus. I can see all the camera details when it's recording. Nothing gets missed. And the camera's in front of it, so the camera's blocking some of it, but that also helps to keep me from being distracted and looking off at a monitor that's off screen. Now, at least when I look at the monitor, my eyes are pointing generally in the right direction. The lighting, I said the main light is on the ceiling beam, but I've got two side lights. And those side lights are also off the floor. One is mounted directly to the cabinet and one is mounted to a bookshelf that's just slightly to the left of the cabinet. So all of the lighting is off the floor, microphone, cameras, all off the floor. Another huge advantage of having that microphone not connected to the table is that sound, it's isolated from sound, it doesn't get jarred. The stuff on the ceiling beam is totally out of the way. Everything, in fact, is out of the way. The cabinet has another purpose, which is super useful, which is that all of the electrical equipment, barring the electrical equipment that's not running across that beam on the ceiling, is all in that cabinet, in the top shelves of that cabinet. And there's a lot of wiring down there. There's power strips, there's HDMI switchers, HDMI splitters, there's live streaming equipment. There's tons of cable for all the 4 cameras connecting to it. So the use of that cabinet against the wall and as a mounting surface and the beam, when you combine all that, you basically have almost no intrusion into your living working space other than the table. If you are interested in building a table like this, I thought I'd give you a quick overview of how I did it. If you imagine this is the table surface, this is a sheet of hardwood veneer plywood cut down so that the opening here is a standard mat size, which is 4 foot by 3 foot. This railing, the way this is built is 3 simple pieces. We've got 2 1x2 pieces, and one of them has just been routed maybe a 1/4 of an inch deep and a little more than 1/8, but I might make it taller if I was doing it again. This is what you're seeing here, the space to slide the mat underneath. And so essentially the way this works is that, imagine these are long, 8-foot long boards. I've just got a 4 inch wide one to show you. And we'll just put some tape, but obviously you would glue these. And I'll show you how I built them, just like this. So you see, here is our 4-inch wide top, and then I've got a 1x2 that's flush with this edge here, and then a 1x2 on its side here with a little bit of route. So this here is this here, and it sits on the table just like that. So there's the cross section, and here's what it looks like from the side. This is sanded smooth. And this is your cross section, and here is exactly what you're looking at here, and this is your tabletop. So this lets you slide the mat under this little lip that you've routed out so that you don't see the edge of the mat. And obviously you want to cut the size of this surface close enough to a standard mat size. And this is a 36 by 48 mat, but you can get larger and smaller mats. And so I built these sort of virtual board here with these 3 pieces. I built long sections of them, and then I cut them to this size with a 45-degree miter cut. You'd use a miter saw for that. So this gives you 4 pieces for your sides. 1, 2, 3, and then the other one that you can't see that's in front of the camera. And you just place those right on the table and glue and screw up from underneath. Everything's glued and then screwed up from underneath so you don't see anything on the table. And that's how you build this table. The supports you've seen are bookshelf pedestals for storage and stability, and those sit under the table and then screw up just with a couple screws to keep them from moving around, and easy to disassemble. And the finish I use is a wipe-on polyurethane. So these are dyed with a aniline wood dye is what I like, but whatever dye you would use to dye it. And then I use something like this, which is a very thin satin wipe-on polyurethane. The advantage of wipe-on polyurethane is it's very easy to hand apply. You put on a very thin coat, you sort of wipe it down or brush it on very thin, and it takes about 8 coats, and you sand very lightly between coats, but the result is a very smooth, glossy, not glossy, it's satin, but glassy, very pleasing finish, and easy to do without getting bubbles and stuff. That's the advantage of a wipe-on polyurethane versus something else. If you had a garage, you might spray it on to avoid having any bubbles or ripples, etc. There you go. There are some good threads on Board Game Geek, people building their own tables, fancier and with more details. And you've seen the on the side of this table, there are little sliding shelves you can put in that are just made with drawer slides that look like sort of dovetails, so the sides slip in. And that's the basic. It's a very simple table, but I think it looks nice, feels nice, and perfect size for a mat.